knowledge is power.
BBC Radio Bristol.
John Darvel.
It is that time of year, winter bugs everywhere. Have you escaped them? At this time of year is prime for things like flu. We had a big spike in flu earlier than expected this year. COVID-19, norovirus, you name it, it's flying around. But our schools and offices are places where these bugs are spread. Should we be doing more? Well, our next guest is campaigning on exactly that. Ruth Brooker founded Clean Air for Kids, and she's with me here in the studio. Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Have you escaped the winter bugs?
I have.
Lucky you.
I know. Well, not entirely luck, but yes.
Well, no. We'll talk about that. You're a mum.
I am.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 rowdy boys.
How old?
One is a new teenager and one is
Good
now
luck
8.
with that. Good luck. Well, I think both of my teenage sons didn't talk properly for about 3 years, and now they're quite exactly. Yeah. They're quite eloquent. You have to understand why. Give them the space to do it. And of course, so the teenager will be at secondary.
Yes.
Just started.
Pretty much, yes.
And the other one is primary.
That's right.
I don't get this year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I lose track with it, because the thing about school is that when they go back to school, I don't know whether this happened this term or happened last term, probably more so this term. They go back to school within a week, their mates are off, or indeed your son was probably off.
Well, he wasn't, because we've put in some mitigations to make sure that try and mitigate as much as you can to make sure that doesn't happen. But you're
that's
completely
the common
right.
experience.
Oh, yeah, it's the joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the germ fest of October and everybody is coughing and sneezing and it sort of ripples into the community. So, yeah, it's what happens, and we just sort of have this sort of a little bit of a strange acceptance of it, really, and that's what I'd like to challenge.
Well, I speak from my experience. My only child I have now at school is in her GCSE year. She went back to school and after being there, I think a week, was then in bed for a day and then couldn't go back to school for another 24 hours, 48 hours, because she had a vomiting virus. So it just ripped through the school. So there are things you can do, there are things you can't do. What's your tension?
Well, I think there's some really simple things that we can actually do. Obviously, have more, because there are windows in classrooms which need to be open. And it's tough in winter because they get slammed shut because everybody's cold. And a way of accounting for that is for us all to put air filters into the classrooms, because that means that there will... Shall I explain what an air filter is?
I think most people understand what an air filter is. This is taking the stuff out of the air.
Yeah, it's just like a magic box that sits in the classroom and between the window and the door, sort of in the middle of the room, ideally, based on where the plug sockets are usually. But it will continuously suck all of the air from the room through the box, and it hits the outside, all the germs that are being breathed out by the children continuously. So if there's somebody sick in that classroom, you just want to remove all that air that's just sort of being breathed out by them.
So what's the difference between an air filter and air con? I mean, obviously there's costs involved. We'll come to that in just a moment. So what does an air filter do that air conditioning doesn't do?
Well, air conditioning is just to chill the room, to give you sort of comfort from a kind of warmth or cold position. You know, if it's boiling outside, you want it cold inside.
Yep.
So they don't really do anything to sort of clean the air that's being pumped into these common spaces.
So they just circulate the air and keep it at keep an environmental control on that temperature. Whereas an air filter, would that work against things like the flu virus, the cold virus? Trap it? Kill it? I mean, how does it?
It just traps it and removes it. It sort of hits the outside of the air filter where the filter paper is and gets trapped, and then it sort of the air kind of continues on out of the fan without any bugs attached.
How long would that last? And would you need somebody with a hazmat suit to empty it? I'm just thinking, if you've got this sort of concentrated, filter full of viruses, you'd want to handle that with care.
They don't last for that long.
Okay.
So technically no. But you can change your filter panels about once a year, really, depending on the sort of density of the pollution in the room.
Caps them and then they die of their own. They just basically fizzle out.
Yes.
Right.
Over time, after a certain period of time.
Why does this matter to you? Why is this something that you are so driven by? Because
I think our children deserve better. And so we all know that when they start we've just joked about it, haven't we, with the October start of term, is that it's going to really disrupt their education. And for anybody that is immune compromised and that has to attend school, like my son. So I suppose if you want to know why this started, it's because of my little boy who is now 8. But when he was 2, he got diagnosed with leukemia. So,
and that the many consequences, but one of those consequences is because of what the treatment that happens is that effectively a cold could kill. I mean, you have that.
Yes, it has the potential to be very risky for their health.
Yeah.
I mean, and they have to go to hospital a lot during that time. So just to explain that bit of it, he was in treatment for 3 years, which I think is a bit of a surprise to most people. And it was to me at the time when he was diagnosed. I'd sort of experienced adults going through treatment, and it would last sort of 6 months, or whereas for children, they have to have a very long program of chemotherapy to ensure that doesn't develop again. So.
And you're immunocompromised effectively throughout that time?
It's not stable, but, there are times, because we would monitor him continuously. So like every week he would have blood prick, to work out, where are your neutrophils at, so that we could work out how, what the risk level was for him and whether he could go into school that day or, but it's so...
Gosh, that is a determinant, isn't it? Because if you had a blood finger prick and you found out that the immune system was in a worse state of repair at that moment, it's that's the stable door having already been opened. Rather than determining that you shouldn't be going in the next week, your son has already been in the environment which could affect him.
Yes.
The previous 3 or 4 days. So I sort of get why the filter's quite an important constant here.
Yes, and it was important for us to kind of keep the exposure to viruses down to a minimum. But obviously we're, a unique situation. This journey, though, has led me on to realising that actually the air quality in schools is just really not very good, and that is a determinant of disease spread. And so why I've set this organisation up is because I want all children to have as much and healthy education as they can get, and for their health as well, that they shouldn't really be getting sick all the time. It's no good for anybody.
What will one of these things cost to put it in a room? Because, at the end of the day, whether we like it or whether we don't, the Department of Education has a budget, schools have a budget. Out of that budget, they pay for everything from teaching assistants to school meals, and now they'd be paying for air filters in classrooms. So what would it cost?
Do you know what the supply budget for teachers was last year? It's reported on Sky News, and I don't know if you know that.
I know the total budget for the Department of Education. I don't know the individual breakdowns of it because I don't know everything of everything.
I think you might be a little bit surprised that it was £1.4 billion went on supply teaching.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest, because there is a recruitment issue within teaching. There are I think there's about 30,000 vacancies in teaching at the moment, and there are some subjects where you'd be lucky to find a teacher. Physics being one, maths being another. But what's that got to do with an air filter? Because
their teachers are off more now. We can see it in the I haven't got a graph here, obviously. I can't
so you're talking about the supply budget being because teachers are sick because they're breathing in the air that little Timmy and Susie are also breathing in as well.
So the children are getting sicker and the teachers are also getting sicker, which is causing a sort of, obviously you're always going to have supply teachers, but there is a much more demand for it, and the budget for it is whopping, isn't it, really? Whereas the Lib Dems came up with a figure a few years ago, which is of 140 million. So it's a sort of smaller amount of money compared to 1.4 billion. If we could
that 140 million would be not the 1 point whatever billion you said. It would be 140 billion if the
million.
140 million if the air was cleaner. That's what, because I'm just trying to work out.
That's the budget that they worked out to pay to improve.
But it would have to be front load. I'm not going to get technical here, but you'd have to front load this. You couldn't prove that you were saving the money. They would have to be the initial investment. The school would have to go, right, hopefully we can pay for this without having to pay for supply teachers and sick pay for teachers by sticking one of these in a room, because it'll pay for itself, in inverted commas. But you've got to pay for it before it pays for itself, as it were. What's the cost? What does it cost?
Well, I don't want to put this burden onto schools.
Right.
I think this decision has to come from policy and government, essentially. But also Bristol's in charge of its own education. So I've been talking to them.
Partly.
Yeah, by getting them to, and also just to check about whether this is worth it, Sadiq Khan in London has just spent £2.7 million on putting air filters into some schools in London. And they've done a pilot already to check that it was worth doing. Otherwise you wouldn't be spending the money. So you can.
So when has he done that?
October this year.
Right. So that is a trial for what? 6 months? 12 months?
No, he's done the pilot already.
So he's done the pilot, and then he's now put them in. I'm guessing these are certain schools that have real air quality issues over and above the standard air quality issues that we all have. So, for example, we have a clean air zone in Bristol. Doesn't mean to say outside that clean air zone everything's tickety-boo, any more than actually inside that clean air zone that the air is clean. It's just slightly less bad than it used to be. So there is evidence. We come down to cost because it comes down to front loading. I mean, you say that it's within a budget. That budget is determined by tax and spend. So
I just think that it would transform society if we made this investment.
Okay.
Just to give you an example, a little case study, like you were just describing earlier, a friend of mine's son, he had to have a week off in September for norovirus, which is obviously bad for the child and bad for the family, then have to take off time off their work to look after them. And then they might run the risk of them getting sick too. So, and then again, he was sick with the flu before Christmas, which had another week off school. And then he got a chest infection and on top of it and had to have antibiotics. So it ripples into society.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you're thinking about it's not just teachers, supply teachers being replaced or replacing teachers. It's, as you say, if you've got a child that's off work for a week, you've got childcare issues. And if you've got a child who's got norovirus, you probably don't want to get, nanny and granddad, your mum and dad looking after them, because that might not be good for their health either. So there's a lot of good points you're making here. This is what the Department of Education has said. We've got a statement, of course. This government has inherited a crumbling education estate, but we won't let that be our legacy. We recognise the importance of air quality and ventilation as part of a safe, high-quality learning environments, helping children to achieve and thrive. We provide clear guidance on ventilation, including using CO2 monitors and air cleaning units, and will continue to review best practice to ensure guidance is up to date. As part of our plan for change, we're also finalising new construction frameworks and design standards, which will set out new and updated standards for centrally delivered school building projects that reflect industry standards, including for ventilation. Well, that's the future you're talking about right now, aren't you?
There's a lot in that statement, isn't there, that I'd like to address?
I'm sure there is, and we haven't got a great deal of time. What you're talking about is your son's classroom, as an example.
Yeah.
Having an air filter in it that takes out all the viruses and bugs, bacteria that's floating around that could go through a school and go through that class like wildfire. I would have guessed that obviously the Sadiq Khan thing has got to work and work well. Or what? What do you think is going to be the tipping point to get this going for you?
What is the tipping point? A lot of people to send letters to their MP if they feel motivated by this issue as well and would like to see their children less sick at school. Please get in touch with us through the website and help me write letters, because that's the thing. If MPs and councillors receive a lot of letters about this, they're going to feel quite motivated to change the situation. I really think this could be transformative. So
this is about parent pressure, ultimately. Parent pressure and awareness
of what... Yes.
There is an element that you can change the environment that may ultimately be better for your child and for you and yours, that you're not sending your kids back to school in October after half term and then you know that there's a cold in the post.
Yes, exactly. I think parents would feel quite motivated about this, but they don't really know what the solutions are, and that there is a solution that is actually pretty affordable. I've got it down to, with the help of my amazing primary school, who've been incredibly supportive. I've worked it out. It fluctuates because of price changes, but it's about £8 per pupil per year, the price of a coffee and cake. Why would we not want that for our children? In that context, that's quite affordable.
Almost sounds like PTA money in a way.
I don't want it to come from that, though, because there's a risk that they won't get turned on. This has to come from top down, because there's a whole education package that needs to go along with it. So the teachers have to be supported, because it's not their fault, is it? It's not their responsibility to make sure that the children are breathing clean air at school. We don't have a water filter for that. They're not managing the children's water intake. But I really do believe that children have a right to an education and a right to stay healthy when they're trying to get their education. We shouldn't just accept relentless sickness because it's too inconvenient to us.
The website is cleanairforkids.co.uk. Cleanairforkids.co.uk. Ruth, I think the most